All right, everybody. According to the clock, it is now 50 minutes past the hour. Welcome to extra session number 1 of 2. For those of you who haven't caught up on what was happening with that, we've split this 2-hour session in half and given JMAP the second hour so that people who are in the US East Coast and need to attend can attend that session. We will be doing the second half of extra tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. in the session that used to belong to JMAP. And we will be going through IMAP 4 Rev 2 during tomorrow's session. Today's session, we will be working on these things. Anyway, let's start here. We have the note well. If you have not seen it yet, it's worth your while reading through that so that you understand what your responsibilities are within this group. We have had, in the last season, we had someone show up on the mailing list with a set of requests that led us to eventually passing over to the Ombuds team and letting them know that this was happening because they were making demands and complaining about behaviour of other members on the mailing list. I'm hoping all of that is resolved, but do keep in mind that this applies to your interactions with the IETF entirely. All right, moving on to the agenda for today. Welcome, Barry, as our new area director for this group. That's right. looks brand new. Yes, Alexi is still floating around writing stuff and involved. We're going to look at the quota, the submission token, and anything else, and possibly also talk about the recharter today. Did you two want to switch orders, or do you want to still go with quota first? So let's start with submission tokens then. That mic there. Yes. Welcome our remote people as well. Thank you for joining us.
Michael Sluzars. I have my co-author, actually the one who came up with most of this stuff. Timo, he should be on. Where is it?
Yeah, he's there.
Yeah, he's on the list. So hopefully Timo can.
There we go. That's what we want.
Yeah, no one's ever accused me of being quiet, so hopefully you can hear me in the back there. Submission tokens. Didn't mean to kind of spring this on people too much. If you were at FOSDEM, Bron happened to join us at FOSDEM, and so he saw some of the. Oh, we already have.
Sorry, just preface this. This is not a working group document, and at the moment, this cannot be in the charter no matter what. So this is
new
guest presentation.
Guest presentation.
Just to set
this. It's a guest presentation and a request that we look at.
Yes.
Right, and then we can separately figure out what to do with it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry. With that out of the way. The why. I think the next slide. Don't have too many slides here, but this is really getting into why this exists. Actually, I'm going to start with the third bullet point first. The big project, one of the big projects that we are working on is an idea of chat over email. Essentially, it's chat over IMAP. It's not my favorite name, but that's what we've decided to go with. But it's chat over email. And part of that is looking at email, and current email delivery can be slow at best. I mean, a certain 95th percentile email delivering submission is, it comes in good enough time. But these days, modern messaging technologies is you get this very low latency delivery with also things like potentially like confirmed delivery. I mean, obviously, when you send a message, SMTP, queue, gone, you don't know what's going to happen. So the idea being that email, if possible, or an email system, if possible, should provide a more real-time messaging experience. So that's the problem that we are looking at and trying to figure out ways to make this better.
It's probably worth just giving a brief couple of minutes background on what chat over IMAP is and what it does, if you want to.
Chat over IMAP, the idea being, again, I'm not a big fan. I see Vittorio's in the back here. I'm not a big fan of the word IMAP on there because it makes it seem like there's something special about IMAP. It really is more of chat over email, which is we're currently working on. And I think I saw on your slide, I'm not sure we're at the point where we want to discuss about standardizing COI or the chat over IMAP in general, because it still really is a work in progress. And it's really what it's designed to do. There's a couple steps. The first step is to make a chat protocol or a chat work on existing IMAP or existing email servers, which essentially is IMAP. It's not going to work. We're not looking at POP, but we're looking at IMAP servers. So the existing pool of IMAP servers that exist. How do we make a chat experience that we can roll out today with existing technologies? You don't need to upgrade or anything. And then on top of that is looking down, the next step would be how do we improve technologies or either take advantage of extensions that already exist, open extensions, to make the chat a better experience, and or suggesting improvements to submission or other parts of the mail platform that would allow the experience to be a better experience. Again, so the IMAP part is in there because we feel right now, that is the mail, that's the landscape that's out there. JMAP, we're not discounting. We talked about this before. We're not discounting JMAP as something that can be used in the future, but IMAP is just what exists in the in the wild today. Yes, Barry.
This is Barry. So you're talking about having, let's say, a chat client that is using email, IMAP, and SMTP and whatever on the back end, but it's a chat client.
Correct.
From my point. Okay.
Yes. The idea being is, especially the way that we look at it, is there's things. The question we were facing at a place like FOSDEM is like, why not Jabber? Why not one of these other technologies? And the idea being is we're not saying Jabber is incompatible. Jabber's great if you have Jabber has all these cool features, but the problem is most people in the world don't have a Jabber account. Almost everybody that's on the internet has an email account already. So the idea that you already have a chat account because you have an email address, like that's it. That is your chat account, is your email.
The other thing that I guess you didn't cover here that you did cover in the longer presentation was that this is designed to fall back to regular emails, and it's quite readable and usable just over email. But if you have this chat client, then you get things like it just displaying the individual responses rather than the whole thread, and a nicer experience. But you can easily fall back to a regular email client, and if you CC an email person, they can read it still.
Yeah, and there's the whole UI kind of component to this we're not really going to get into. That's the theory. Obviously not easy, trying to attack the closed source or the closed models of messaging. And, as a company-wide initiative, that this is what we think is, or we're being pushed to look at. And so hopefully people in this room would find this a worthy goal, something, and again, and the idea we're using open standards or trying to introduce new standards that we can use, that everybody can use. And we'll get to here in a second. The submission token part was pulled out of COI because it's not specific to this initiative. It's going to help out the initiative, the chat over IMAP, but we feel that the submission token idea can actually be used for any email delivery in general. So that's why we're kind of bringing this first, and maybe down the road as this COI stuff gets a little more fleshed out, we'll see how that is. That one's it's a little more. There's so many moving parts right now, so I think that's why I don't really want to get too much into that, at least in this group and in this conversation, at least today. Then I think the next slide would be, I can look down here. Yeah, so this is the how. And then this is going back towards just the submission token idea. Our general idea is incremental improvements using the existing standards, and then to overlay on the infrastructure with the idea that you always can fall back to what exists today, which is there is a delivery path. It may not be real time as you want it to be, but you have a delivery path, and we have the email that we know and love that exists today. And so the idea of submission tokens is to somehow distribute a limited privilege token to allow direct delivery. These tokens are between a sender and recipient pair. So if you're sending to a group, each sender recipient pair has a different token. And then there's two different token trust levels, which is temporary versus permanent. The idea here being that the temporary token is something, you're sending out, you actually don't know if the other person's even going to respond to you in the beginning. And then once you initiate kind of a contact or a delivery connection, that you can have a transaction where you have a more permanent, more secure token. And I think there's one more slide. Yeah, so the question...
are the tokens bidirectional, or if you have a conversation between two people, are there two tokens?
If you have a conversation between two people, so me having a conversation with you and one other person, there would be two separate. Oh,
You and me, I'm back.
yes.
Your token and my token. I agree to the research token. You need two tokens.
For just two people, you would need. Well, the way that it works is I would send you a token. And if you are aware of how this works, right, you implement this, you come back to my server and say, with this token, I can deliver, I have a token, I have access, and then you give me a token during that.
Okay,
yeah,
two tokens.
Yeah, so two tokens.
Good.
Yes,
Thank
sorry, yes. Took a little while to get there, but I think we got the.
Sorry, I didn't give my name, Jim Fenton.
Okay.
Thanks, Jim.
Yeah, I could have put some nice graphics up here, but I think. But anyway, so we're bringing this here today with the draft that's out there, which I screwed up in terms of posting to the wrong place and putting the wrong. I sort of copied and pasted from the existing an existing document. But really, we're looking at, is there something that we're obviously missing here? And then the people, people in this room that do this every day, is this something that even makes sense? I mean, we think it does. We've been thinking, Timo can actually speak up more if we get this incorrect, but this has probably we've been playing with this idea now since at least last summer. So this is not something we've come up with. It's something that we've vetted pretty heavily internally. And so the draft that we have that we've posted and is, I think I actually reposted it, so it should now show up under the extra as a under the extra page. Really what we're looking for now is some input, starting, again, try to get these questions resolved. I'll put this here. The first bullet point here is we were looking at this where Timo's main idea was that the submission servers would be doing all the work. So this would be transparent to end users. You send it to your submission server adds the token, sends it off, and then the other way around is when. But I look at this as a more generalized use case where that's a perfectly fine use case, and that's actually the way that we're going to be implementing. But there can be a thing where you on your side, your submission server isn't aware of this. So as a client, you should still be able to use, if you want to build the information into your client or build this feature into your client, it can do this even without having to go or waiting for a submission server to handle this. Yes, Alexi.
Sorry, I might have missed it, in which case I apologize. Can you describe shortly what's the purpose of the token? What's the advantages? What would you get with token versus the legacy client that doesn't use the token?
So legacy client, you're obviously going to just the SMTP. So you have no idea how many hops it's going to take or how long or if it's going to queue. So that's one part of not, when you don't have a token, you go through the regular today's mail delivery. With a token, you get the advantage of going directly to the external, the person you're trying to send it to. You go directly to their server. And so you are delivering, it's essentially local delivery. And so it's a synchronous delivery at that point.
Hang on a second, Pete. We've got Neil remotely.
Yeah,
first.
just Neil first.
Yep. Neil.
Hi, am I on?
Yep.
Good. So a few questions. does this token also come with a separate server address then? Because you're saying it's going to bypass all kind of existing hops and go directly to the mail store. So is this a token plus some kind of URL or host name?
No.
No.
So the idea right now is and this is sort of the tricky part, which is down here, is the auto discovery part, is how do I know, if you have foo@example.com, how do I know what server at example.com to go to? And the idea right now is to use the existing SRV records, because we're just connecting to the submission server that already exists. It's nothing new, but it's a submission server that already exists under the current standards.
If it already exists, it's not the one you would normally deliver mail to.
No, it would not be. Yeah, because these days I don't go when I'm sending something to somebody at google.com. I don't go to the SRV record for submission. I'm sending it to the MX record.
Sure, but it's like a separate MX record then, essentially. Once you have a token, you're doing a separate, but it's still something from the DNS, just separate to the MX records.
Correct.
Okay. I'll have to think about that. I have no further questions at the moment.
So, this is Pete Resnick. I'm trying to wrap my head around what exactly is going on here. So, in the normal course of doing email, I would be perfectly happy to get additional routing information to go directly to, and it wouldn't be the submission server, it would be the delivery server. I would like to go to the delivery server associated with the IMAP store for this particular user, because it'll go faster. So it sounds like there's two bits here. One is give me, through SRV, the place that I should connect to directly, right, in SMTP land. And the other is queue jumping, right? I don't want to be queued with the rest of the mail. I want to bypass that and jump over the queue. Which one are you doing? Or are you doing both? Or
I would say we're doing both. The idea is it's essentially a trust model. This is a way that, it's a trust model. It's saying, I have taken, I've decided to send you a message. Therefore, I trust you enough. You're not some random person on the internet that can send me a message, because you still allow that. But what I'm saying is I give you permission to come back to me, and I have, that when you come back and you send message through, I might have a different trust model in terms of the way that I scan your mail, spam reporting, rate limiting, those kind of things.
Okay, so let me drill down a bit. This sounds like there's a few functions here, and I'm trying to separate out the functions from the implementation.
Okay.
So first thing I've got is effectively a buddy list, right? I'm saying these are the people who I'm willing to get direct communication from.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so I'm basically telling my server, if this person contacts me, send them on through. No need to be spam filtering, no need, and we're going to do.
Well, I wouldn't say no spam filtering.
Well,
but
if I've given the name and I say this person's okay, and they've got the right credential, which is going to be more than just an email address, then they can just come on through and bleep up on my screen, and that'd be great. Independent of that, I want the transport mechanism to be more direct, although it sounds like that doesn't really matter so long as I don't get queued, right? If it goes through multiple hops, so long as those hops don't take a long time, so long as it gets through to me pretty immediately without being held up in spam checking and all the other stuff that currently SMTP does, that's okay. You would agree?
Yeah, I think I'm trying to wrap my mind around that also. Yeah, so I think that sounds accurate. That sounds like an accurate
And I guess one of the things that I'm trying to figure out here is, why do the sender, need to keep any? The token is only my credential, my crypto junk to send to you so that you know it's me.
Yes.
Right? So it's not a token per se to indicate I want this service. It's here's my identification, and for regular email, let alone chat, I could use this to say get through quickly and skip some of the steps that you would normally go through because I'm me and you know I'm me.
That's the idea, yes.
Okay, and I think maybe the mechanism you've got here seems a little funky for some of those features, but I get the desire for the feature, and it's interesting.
Okay.
Cool. We've got Neil remotely again, so I'll pop him back in next. Neil, you're up.
Where is he?
Your picture hasn't appeared yet.
He's inky
No.
or blinky, I'm not sure which.
Hello, Neil. Are you there?
It says you're speaking, but you're not.
Yes.
I'm going to boot Neil off, and he can come back in again.
See, high latency. We're trying for low latency.
Yeah.
That's
All right,
that's
Jim.
the goal here.
Jim Fenton again. So lots of questions here.
Yeah.
So it seems like there's one phase where you're negotiating the tokens, and I can sort of see that as happening possibly through even normal email as a bootstrapping mechanism. But once you've done that and you've got tokens, I'm not at all clear why. What does the rest of the email infrastructure bring to this that is preferable to just having some dedicated probably lower latency mechanism that you can just talk to the recipient's server?
I think the idea here is I would love to have a better mechanism for routing but I think the problem becomes how do you roll that out on a worldwide basis versus something like this where we feel this is more of an incremental upgrade, right? For software that already exists, it's something that's slightly different, slightly more you have to add on to existing software rather than creating, again, like you could create like a Jabber-like, infrastructure where they have created a system that does a much better job of this, but how do you roll that out is that something that's going to be easily, you tell all the mail providers in the world, now we have to start sending messages this way, or do you tell mail providers, okay, this is a small incremental upgrade that you can do to your servers that allows this sort of access?
But the problem I'm having with all of that is that there's an awful lot of baggage that comes with using email as a transport for like a one-line message. I mean, you're basically sending, it seems like you're sending a full email message for every time somebody hits the return key. And that I mean, it seems like a lot of overhead, and I shouldn't worry about overhead, but what I am more worried about is the latency of that, because when somebody, typically when somebody sends me an email message, and they press enter, there's maybe a 5-second delay, and I've got a really minimal mail server, my own mail server, and there's like a 5-second delay of between when they send the message and when I get the message, and that doesn't seem like it's going to be a very good experience for people.
Yeah. But I think you're getting more into the application of this, like chat. Again, for the submission stuff alone, we're just looking for improved. This to us is a better trust, or at least it adds additional trust to an existing.
I totally get the tokens. In fact, I've maybe talk to you offline about that, because I've got some things I'm doing myself there.
Good. But you're talking more about the real time, like why you need millisecond sort of that kind of stuff.
Right. Yeah.
And I think the answer to that is maybe your use case you don't, or in your server you don't want that sort of that load. Yeah. This is a question that is coming up with.
Yeah. And it relates to the queuing things that I think Pete was asking, and so forth as well. Just how are you going to be able to use this as a anyhow.
Yeah.
All right, we'll try Neil again. Hello, Neil.
Hello. So I've got kind of two questions. First, I'm still not entirely clear how this is going to make the delivery significantly faster, because you're still going through kind of the same SMTP infrastructure. Like, providers don't try to make their systems slow. Is the only thing that it's bypassing kind of spam checking, that kind of thing? Because you're going to have probably load balancing SMTP servers or something like that on the outside anyway, and you're probably not going to want people to bypass that. I can't see how you're going to make a significant impact from this on the delivery time, because it doesn't seem to be chopping off enough, essentially.
I guess the question would be
how is it going to make a big difference to delivery time?
How we potentially see a speed up in the delivery time.
Yes.
I mean, in our experience, that, for example, the customers that we have, very large customers, they actually have mail queues that don't even exist. Like if you send through regular channels, the mail queues don't even exist at the organization. They're in the cloud somewhere, AWS, and then it goes through the provider, the anti-spam provider doesn't, they live somewhere completely separate.
Yes.
And obviously you're still going to have some of that potentially in the background here, but then that gives you, it's a choice that you have to make as an admin is, am I willing, do I have enough trust in this system where I can do much less anti-spam, or I can do something like I'm willing, instead of doing heavy anti-spam, I'm going to do rate limiting instead. Like that's going to be a better, where I don't have to queue messages and then, or there's going to be a limit to the size of messages that can be delivered this way. I mean, there can be, there's several different ways that we see that you potentially, this may not be a general purpose solution that everybody can agree with, but at least for some subset of messages, this is something that can help out.
Okay, so it's for when you have a off-site kind of mail filtering thing for kind of spam checking, and you want to be able to bypass that. Okay, I can see what if you had set up like that could make sense. And I guess that actually answers what was going to be my second question of why you need a token rather than just if the message is DKIM signed from the sender and the sender's on your buddy list that you trust. Technically, it's the domain being signed, but not the user. Then why can't you just use that rather than requiring a token? But if you need it to have gone to somewhere different in the first place, then yes, I guess that doesn't work.
Right. It's pretty rare that we're DKIM signing I equals being different from D equals.
But still, you can reuse existing infrastructure.
Alexis says, but still you can reuse existing infrastructure. I mean, that's kind of where I was going to go. This is Barry. Neil, are you done?
Yeah, I'll go.
Okay. I'm sort of following up on some of the things Pete said, and then some things that have come up since. The general way this sort of stuff is working is, as Neil said, the stuff's in the cloud. I've got my system is front-ended by some spam filtering that I have farmed out to another company, and stuff is bubbling in that way. And even internally, I'm not going to expose my internal structure to the outside. So if I have 3 hops inside my company before it gets to my delivery server, you're still going to go through all that. And so again, I have the same sort of question. I really don't see how this is going to expedite anything. And I don't see how a lot of organizations are going to be willing to allow this kind of penetration. It would seem to me that this would expose a situation where a user could allow somebody to bypass some of my security or at least defensive mechanisms. Do you have some? Yeah. Do you have some? For instance, one thing I'm trying to block by this is a malware coming in on email, and I'm certainly not going to allow one of my users to say mail from Alexei can bypass that.
And I don't think we're saying that.
Well, I understand. So how does this really benefit the system if given that or given all of that?
But I think, to me, again, that's why it's important that we're not saying this bypasses spam, but I also, you do, as an admin, I would want to be given, if I'm giving another way to trust, to increase trust. Like DKIM is fine, it gets me from where, domain level, but I don't necessarily trust. But this is something where this sort of idea is, I have a user that actually has gone to another user, and obviously there can be hijacking of a token somehow, but they would have to, you have to be in the domain and just be sending messages as a user, and there is some hijacking issues that's part of some of the questions that we have to work through. But I still, at least our experiences are, it does take, because these queues get full of junk messages and spam messages that have to be gone through. And if this truly does increase or reduces the amount of messages in this pipeline by, 10 10 times or something like that, a factor of 10, that to me is a factor of 10 increase in the speed that message is delivered in that pipeline is worthwhile to go after.
I agree with that. I just don't see how it's going to do that.
Okay.
What is the actual mechanism by which these messages are going to bypass anything or are going to reduce queues anywhere?
Well, it's synchronous delivery, right? So when you deliver the message, it's synchronous delivery. So you have to sit there and deliver the message or not deliver the message. It doesn't go into another queue. So it's not.
Okay, wait. So messages sent with this are not store and forward?
This is not store and forward. Yes.
Okay, then I completely think it's not going to work because I'm absolutely certain that you're not going to get major email providers exposing their delivery servers directly to the internet that way. I could be wrong, but I doubt it.
Okay.
Yeah, there's some stuff in the Jabber channel here from Ned Fried. Spam filtering is done in the cloud in a variety of ways. A full-on SMTP hop is only one of the ways. SMTP proxies are another, and so is a Milter. That said, what I see in typical corporate setups involves a bunch of internal hops. We try and drive a number of the hops down in our deployments, but customers are surprisingly resistant to making the necessary changes. And yeah, even when they save money, they still want to do all those things.
So, Pete Resnick again. To answer Barry a little bit, and then I'll go spelunking. So, if you're running a Jabber server right now with assorted Jabber extensions turned on, people can toss malware across that channel anytime they want in much nastier ways. So long as this is implemented as an extension which causes the SMTP channel to become effectively an instant message channel, and people agree that that's what they're going to allow on their systems, then it's plausible to me. Now, that said, you've got to implement it end to end. And that means that people who are going to use this mechanism have to participate on both ends. Whether that's deployable or not is a much more interesting question. Either way,
you don't need to implement it in end to end. You could have this channel one way and regular SMTP flow the other way.
All I'm saying is, in one direction.
Yeah.
In one direction, it has to be both ends have to decide that they're going to do this.
Okay.
So now one level higher, and then I'll just drop down for a second.
And I want to reply to that.
Okay. So the one level higher is there is no way on IETF's Green Earth that this should be in other than its own working group if it's going to get going. But yes, thank you. Okay, there's a lot to be talked about here. And I do think you should take very seriously the comments that the token stuff and doing some sort of, whether you want to call it authorization or buddy list or whatever it is an interesting separate issue from the real-time delivery. Now, to spelunk for just a moment, if we're going to talk about real-time delivery, during the IETF fax working group, there was a proposed, but I don't believe ever standardized, immediate delivery SMTP mechanism. Way, way, way back in like RFC 821 and prior days, there was actually an SMTP send command for exactly this mechanism. It is long since gone with the dodo bird, but if what you want to do is keep it within the SMTP stream but have magic happen, we could resurrect things like that. Again, I think you want to separate out these questions into the architectural bits. Some of them are going to be easily solvable and useful, like the token bit, I think. Some of them, like getting end-to-end participation to be able to bypass a bunch of crap, is going to be deployment-wise hard, maybe mechanism-wise pretty straightforward.
I have one really bogus proposal to throw out here, which is that if you were going to implement this in the most hacky way possible, you would provide an IMAP login token that allowed you to append to a mailbox.
Yep.
Wow!
Hell!
Okay. This is Barry.
We've got that mechanism, by the way.
In response to Pete, do you think there's any way that Qualcomm would have allowed someone outside on the internet to come in and directly connect to some delivery server as in an end-to-end way? especially considering that the authorization to do that was generated by an end user somewhere in the system.
What's my old line? I really like straw men. They're good neighbors. They don't make a lot of noise and they don't smoke. So no, I don't think in any way, shape, or form anybody would be stupid enough to deploy regular SMTP and allow me to go to a delivery server directly. Except I don't think that's the only mechanism for this kind of thing.
Right.
And so, I think, yes, this has gone off in a funky direction because these guys assumed that they were limited to a certain set of solutions.
That's why I'm going to spill out.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so I think we're kind of all agreed that none of us really thinks we're going to do this over SMTP. Well, he said regular SMTP. What I'm wondering is why not set something up using HTTP, which was designed for this? And Pete doesn't like that either. But I don't know.
Guess what I suggested when I first heard this idea? So you're just going to hit an HTTP endpoint and push a message, right?
I mean, I'm glad nobody has strong feelings on this subject.
I like the idea. So, all right, but the other thing about instant messaging, which we'll say instead of chat, let's call it instant messaging.
Sure.
Years ago, when we started trying to standardize instant messaging and eventually wound up with XMPP and Simple, we had lots of debates about the exact mechanism to handle this stuff. Protocols like Beep were developed and stuff like this, and there's all kinds of fallout from that, and we wound up with two standards. Alexei says XKCD a bit. We have too many standards. We have to go down to one. Now we have too many plus one. So I would rather see us try to do something like this over a protocol that was designed to be an end-to-end protocol rather than a protocol that was designed to be a store and forward protocol. So.
From Jabba, just before Pete comes up here, Ned says, you're all rearranging the deck chairs. The protocol does not matter.
There is that, yes.
So let me strongly push back on Barry and softly push back on Ned. Because Ned scares me because he's big and mean, right? No. Exactly. One of the things that I think you miss if you go down the path of, we should do another protocol, is that one of the design features of this proposal is that it falls back to SMTP messages. So if you can jam something into the SMTP pipeline that says, deliver this more like an instant message, and that extension isn't there, it gets delivered like an email message. That's a design feature. And so even if and Barry says he'll buy that. So even if the mechanism here is I go to my my submission server and hand it a token, and my SMTP submission server goes, screw this, I'm not using SMTP, I'm going to do HTTP directly to the other end, that's a fine outcome so long as the back-off mechanism is I've just submitted an SMTP message and off it goes.
I'll buy that too.
Chris Newman, there is a standard out there on the standards track that that's an SMTP extension called deliver by, which says I've got this message, deliver it by this time, and if you can't, bounce it. And you can give it in a delay or whatnot. So a former coworker wrote that document. That former coworker now works for Tinder.
It's a type of messaging. It's a type of messaging.
Big scale. Okay, yeah. But anyway, what if you just said, if you got to deliver by, one way to implement that is to, trigger a direct, trigger more direct channel.
Separate the tokens from
Yes.
This is Barry. I guess there's different semantics there, though, Chris. There's one is saying if you can't deliver it in a timely manner, don't deliver it. And the other is saying expedite the delivery of this because it's some special thing. So they're very different semantics.
I can clarify. There are two modes. There is a mode where you say, well, still try to, don't bounce it, continue delivering it, but it will just track and say, oh, it took longer than expected.
Yeah.
The end will receive it. So it doesn't have.
It's still different semantics.
Close enough. Yeah, there is yet another thing. I've done a SMTP priority extension where you can basically say, you can tag a message saying, this is a special thing. Again, all different pieces, possibly.
There's a bit of stuff happening in the Jabber channel as well. Neil says, I agree with Pete. There's perhaps value in just a token to say to the SMTP server, give this priority, which the server can decide what to do with. I've followed up on that, saying that the issue is that the source server doesn't know if the token's valid or not. So if it just prioritizes anything that's got one of these tokens on it, then everyone's going to add a token to it so that they get prioritized ahead of everything else, and the flow control at the source would be broken. You need to know whether the destination will accept this and prioritize it. Otherwise, it's just the high-speed bit that everyone will turn on. Ned says, drilling down past all the details, the essential characteristics of this proposal appears to be that the message ends up in the email message store and that the client knows that the message got there. Correct? Yes?
I would say correct. Yes, I mean, the nice, at least the way that it was drafted, a nice artifact of that is that you do have deliver, like, in a message, in a more message, or we're calling it chat, instant messaging, where you send a message and it says delivered or something like that, right? You get that when we're looking at this, overlaying it as to what we want to use it for. That's one of the things that it does get us.
Just sort of a side note type comment. I think a lot of us need to digest it.
Yeah.
There are lots of concerns, and there are lots of, there are bits that are interesting to some people, and there are other bits which look scary or not interesting. So I think we probably should take discussion, continue it somewhere.
Yeah. Although you said, is extra the right place for this discussion? And there you
But Bron wanted to talk about rechartering, and I want to slightly hijack the discussion because of SMTP aspect of it.
Yeah.
I want to talk about.
Should we move to that discussion?
If you don't mind. Yeah.
It is
right.
time.
Yes, thank you.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because the upshot is we think it's interesting.
Well, is as long as you understand the why, people understand the why. And so the question is the solution the right solution for the why? And that's the part where there's discussion.
It's all of the how.
Yeah, so this is Barry. I'll say in summary of that, yes. I think it's interesting. I think discussing the why and the whether is a good thing for us to do, and we can beat out the how later. And I agree with what Pete said, that it absolutely has to be its own working group. So,
All right. Thank you. Do we want to still look at IMAP quota, or do we want to jump straight to recharter discussion now? Recharter. All right. Let's talk about recharter then. We have mostly finished what our charter originally said. Sorry, I don't have the charter up here, which I meant to do. Let's see if we can quickly get to that. So this is our current charter. We'll work on updates, extensions, and revisions to IMAP Civ, Manage Civ. We didn't say POP3 in there. We'll start by processing the backlog, which we have basically done. There's IMAP 4 Rev 2 to do, and there's nothing else on our horizons right now. We've done some Civ. We have said we're not going to do any DMARC, DCRUP, JMAP, POP3, SMTP, LNTP, email format / MIME. But we've now done, there's the quota BIS document as well. The EAI with Civ we have not adopted. But it is time to look at this charter and see where we want to go from here. So I guess Alexi and Barry probably have the biggest opinions on what they want from this group.
Well, so when I was chartering this working group, I actually wanted to include SMTP as a part of it. And I got pushback from some people because there are also, there is, SMTP has revision of the base spec, which is overdue. There are some possible extensions. So we thought that was quite enough of work to do. So, and recently there was a discussion on IETF SMTP mailing list, again asking for SMTP-related working group. So I'm thinking we probably should charter SMTP-related working group. And this document might or might not end up there.
So this is Barry. Why do you think it needs to be an SMTP working group rather than a continuation of email stuff working group like Extra? I mean, that's something I think we could do in this working group without, we'd have to recharter, but why would we need to have a separate working group? So first of all, okay, I would not want to do SMTP without doing message format as well. So we're talking about updating 5321 and 5322. Right, and then we probably want to do MIME. So we have this set. I would want to do the first two first, then attack MIME. Do we have a lot of work that's coming into this working group that we would want to separate from updating 5321 and 22?
I would like to be able to work on SMTP extensions without requiring a wait of a couple of years. Well, considering some people involved in this is a very practical reason. And I'm sorry I cannot be more vague than this.
Well, what's the big deal with adding another working group? No, there isn't. So, I guess I wouldn't object to that. It's a different, I guess one of the things that is that it's a question of what we're looking to do with 5321 and 22. And my view of what we want to do is move them to internet standard and minimize the changes we make. We have a list of things that we know we need to fix in them. I don't want to drum up all of the people who want to put in extensions into the base SMTP or, more other changes beyond what we know are glitches. And that's what's going to take years if we want to do them, and I'd rather not.
Some of the reasons why I want to work on extensions, and this is slightly hypothetical in the sense that there are a couple of extensions we're not necessarily sure whether they're good extensions. I would like to be able to exercise SMTP extensibility and being able to actually publish extensions in this organization where you don't have to have 10 years of experience to do this. The last two people who were able to publish SMTP extensions, I think, like Murray and me, and we had over 10 years of experience within this organization. I want to make it easier for new people to do this if they have sensible proposals.
Ned has something he wants to say to the mic, which is, does the update of RFC 5321 need to be coupled to the update of RFC 5322? Yes, there are a few interdependencies, but can't they be managed?
I suppose they can. This is Barry. Pete says 5322 is a lot quicker. And I'm not sure about that because I'm thinking if we go with the model I'm talking about for 5321, I think we should be able to get that through fairly quick also. I don't know. But I'm a hopeful sort, says Pete. Yes, I am. Anyway, I was not suggesting that we shouldn't. I'm not suggesting that we shouldn't work on extensions while we're doing that. So I guess that would say we should work on extensions here and have another working group progressing 53, 21, and 22. I mean, I guess there's no reason we couldn't do 21 and 22 separately. I guess I've said what I want to say.
All right. What's the action that comes out of this?
Let's write a charter.
I think we're talking about plurals. So,
plurals only in the sense that we're rechartering this, and we're
rechartering this anyway.
Right, and so that's one charter, and then the other charter is for the working group that would progress SMTP, message format, and MIME in some stages over time.
So I think Barry and I will take an action item of either draft some text or, organize other people to draft some text.
Okay. We still have 9 minutes left.
I might be able to talk about quota if you want.
Yeah, go for it. Yep.
So I looked at all. Last time we met, there was an interest in quota extension, and I looked at all the list of my expired draft, and found a 12-year-old document, which was about quota. So it was also in XML format, so I was very pleased about that. So document was actually co-edited with Dave Cridland, and he did quite a lot of good text there. I don't think he wants to be actively involved, but this is basically a minor revision of this document. Next slide. Right, this is the story. Yeah, and before we wrote the document 12 years ago, there was another attempt earlier on, which was more complicated, where we added lots of extra commands. To remind people what RFC 2087 does is there are 3 commands. There is command to discover quota root, which is a collection of mailboxes quota applies to for a mailbox. There is a way of querying quota root, and there is a way of setting quota root information. Early attempt with Dave Cridland, we added lots of commands like delete quota, list quota roots, and make it more flexible. And then this was great, but slightly over-engineered. We decided to scale it down back. And the latest attempt is the minimal set of useful changes and extensions to the existing RFC, I believe. Next slide. Right. So RFC 2087, it was a bit vague about what quota applied to. It gave a couple of examples. It never promised that there are anything more than examples. And some servers implemented them exactly as sort of implied by the document, but they were never really documented. So this draft standardized 2 quota resource types that were in the original RFC, properly documenting is basically storage, which is a total sum of all messages in all mailboxes covered by the quota root, or number of messages. And it adds another one, which is a list of mailboxes allowed per user, or per quota root again. There is an extension to advertise this so that clients can actually figure out, connect to the server and say, okay, I understand this quota resource type. I can do something with it. And, depending how generic they are, they might be able to present some UI for the other ones it doesn't understand, or just ignore them entirely. Then additionally, there is new response code which says over quota, if you do this operation, you are getting very near the quota for the current mailbox, or you went over quota. And then a couple of status command extensions, which basically, if your quota resource type is messages, number of messages, deleted messages will say, if you expunge this mailbox, this is how much you can recover to get, toward your quota. And similar for the deleted storage.
Is that per mailbox things rather than per quota route?
Yes, status is per mailbox, right?
So that there's no way to tell from a quota route the total amount under there that you could.
You have to do it for each mailbox. Yeah. Again, this is actually one of the open questions about, are they only useful if you implement certain quota resource types? Next. Yeah, a few questions in the document. I don't know whether people want to discuss them now. One suggestion was that you can say get quota route for non-existing mailbox to be created, and then it will say, well, if you create this mailbox, it will fall under this quota route. Yeah, with over quota, there are cases, you might have one mailbox selected for at the moment it's defined for the currently selected mailbox, but if you're copying and moving message to another mailbox, do you want to know which mailbox over quota applies to? Again, this, if people are interested in solving this case, then we can extend the syntax to maybe convey this information.
And I had one additional thing that I wanted to suggest there, which was doing a quota for annotation storage. Mm-hmm. If you support the per message annotation, then at the moment that doesn't have support for any quota. We have an extension within Cyrus for doing a quota on that as well.
So, I don't actually want to own this document. I did it because I already wrote it once, and I thought it was close enough to what people want. Is anybody interested to co-edit?
Sure.
No? Absolutely, that.
Take this discussion onto the list too. Michael Sluzars. The mailbox thing is really nice. In fact, that serendipitous came up today or this week. Like we had somebody asking, how many mailboxes do our users have? It'd be nice. We would have to track it for this.
Right.
Question that did come up when we were reviewing this. Does anybody use set quota?
Yeah.
Yes.
Do? Okay. So we were.
Well.
Yeah. Because it's kind of a weird thing. Like, set quota is only useful if you're an admin, and it's for
yeah, I suppose
but
well, that's a good point. We can possibly make it separate capability if if people really don't want to expose this side of thing, but
Yeah, and then the final point was there was discussion about physical storage sizes versus RFC 822 sizes. We actually would love if we just did RFC 822 sizes because there's certain storages we have no concept of what physical sizes are because we don't know how big and stuff. Yeah.
The intent with storage was, I think we had similar issue with another document recently. It has to be no less than the total sum of messages. Mm. If you round up or store extra information that needs counting, you can add it in. But for the most part, it's basically, at least the sum of messages. So if you want to just return the sum of messages, that's fine, basically.
Chris Newman. So the two issues that may merit some thought with relation to this spec are One of them is quota by type, where different types of messages in the mailbox fall under different quotas.
Resource type. Quota resource type can be by message type. You just define a new resource type.
Right. So yeah, that I need to go see how what the spec says compares to what's implemented in our server, since that's implemented in our server.
Again, if you have a specific message types, like, I don't know,
voicemail is the example.
Voicemail might be, we just define another one of these and be done with it. If it's something more complicated, then.
Yeah, I mean, I personally lean towards, let's just find one for voicemails and be done with it.
That's fine. In fact, one of the action items, I think on the next page, is create a registry for resource types. Then it will be easy job.
Okay. Now, the other issue that merits some thought is places where they have one quota which covers not just email but other resources. For, so a given user has one quota, but, if they say upload a Word document into their account, that counts against their one quota.
That's actually related to required server. If the server changes, if the quota usage is counted toward other things somehow, server can send you untagged responses. Well, that's open question.
Yeah,
and somebody upload Word document, you might have.
I would say you probably don't want to do that because when you have this situation where you have a master quota and the IMAP is one thing that contributes to your master quota and usage, your IMAP server is not the source of truth for that information.
Yeah. I can see it both ways. Yeah, that's fair enough. Okay. Can you send this to comments to the mailing list so I can keep track?
Okay.
But I believe, both of these can be satisfied. It's actually pretty close to what you want.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right. We are now cutting over into the JMAP meeting, which starts right now in exactly the same room. I believe that we need to adjourn the current meeting and
well, do you want to know, have we accepted this item provisionally, or do you want to?
We already accepted it at last IETF and said that we accept a quota BIS document to be delivered.
Okay. And chairs, I assume, happy with me, with Michael, to coordinate.
Yes. This is the blue sheet for Extra.
Yes.
It is not the blue sheet for JMAP.
The blue sheet for JMAP.
Thank you.
Right here, if people could.
Did anybody not get the extra one?